Welcome to a brand new podcast. Ian McLean is a writer and the author of TJ's War. David Blair is an actor and the narrator of the audiobook TJ's War. David and Ian have been listening to their readers and listeners and have decided to turn TJ's War into a movie. And since the story covers the entirety of World War II, the movie will cost at least $50 million. Will David and Ian succeed in their quest? Follow them in this podcast series. We're going to make a $50 million movie.
Hey folks, my name is Mark Reid, and if you're listening or viewing this podcast for the first time, let me quickly get you up to date beyond what the title obviously suggests. I'm joined by Ian McLean and David Blair. And I'm counting myself as a member of the team here, though they are spearheading this project, are going to make a movie. More succinctly, turn Ian's book of creative nonfiction about his father, called TJ's War, into a movie. With a preliminary estimated budget of, $50 million. Why not? Here's where I come in terms of this podcast, which you might gather is put together for really three purposes. One, to document the process from start to finish of just what it takes to make a movie from scratch. Two, to learn how to do that, learn as we go. We will eventually speak with producers, directors, editors, scriptwriters for the purpose of acquiring knowledge, but doing so transparently, so you, the audience, can be along for the ride with us. And thirdly, frankly, to promote the film as we go, so that when, not if, but when this is out at the theaters or released on Netflix or whatever, you as the audience will be just as excited about the premiere as we are, because you were along the ride the whole time. That's it in a nutshell. Anything to add, fellas?
I thought you covered it really well. Have fun.
Yeah, that's definitely the other reason we're here. So, Ian and David, so far in this podcast, this will be, I think, episode 6, 7, or 8, somewhere around there. You two have been
tomorrow.
6 is tomorrow, so if this is next, this will be 7. You two have been essentially verbally storyboarding up until now. That is, hashing ideas and thoughts on just how we get started and how you envision the final product. Today, I want to come in and interject and ask questions I think the audience might have at this point. So without further ado, let's get one tiny step closer, fellas, to making a $50 million movie, shall we? How did you come up with 50 million?
Honestly, I think it might be, if it's a TV thing, I think it might be 50 million per episode.
Wow.
Well, it would have a huge cast.
Yeah.
It's a very long story and it's period.
Yeah.
So that last one adds a lot of money to the budget. And the fact that it's war, set in a wartime arena, unless you're going to shoot in everything in close up, the moment you pull the camera back, you're seeing, hopefully, tanks, loads of troops, etc. So, and you have to dress that set as well.
Some of that can be done with like CGI now, right? That's pretty good. It's not as, it used to be CGI was annoying because you're like, it looks like a cartoon or something. But now they make it look so good that you're like, I can't tell if that's real or not.
Game of Thrones.
I think so. Certainly. I think I think we would want to get as much as we can in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And then if we have to use CGI, yeah.
Ian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just the 50 million. In my head, I was looking at a large number of different films and thought, TJ's War, if it was cut down, could be a bit like this or a bit like that, and looked at the budgets as they're recorded in Rotten Tomatoes. And just a rough idea based on a 2-hour-long film. But for it to be a 2-hour-long film, we'd be cutting out enormous amounts of the book.
I want to get to that next. I also, though, looked up movies that were similarly priced. And here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The which is also a great movie. The good, I don't know what the budget was for that one. The good is The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. That had a budget of 55 million. I don't know how much of that was his salary, but the movie made 307. Yeah, right. The movie made 307 million at the box office. That's the good. The bad, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, if you remember that.
Remember it well. I love that film. It's cult
It's not
viewing.
bad. It really is entertaining. The budget on that was 46.6 million, and it garnered a paltry 8 million at the box office.
Yeah.
It was a flop. Here's the ugly, but ultimately fantastic. It wasn't, the budget was low. Napoleon Dynamite was made for $400,000, but it made 46 million at the box office. So you might need to make a Napoleon Dynamite first to get your 50 million. But I thought those were of interest. La La Land, the Academy Award winner for Best Picture, its budget was only 30 million, and it made 447 million at the box office. And lastly, since we're talking war movies, Braveheart was estimated about 65 to 70 million, and it made 213 million at the box office. So there's hope. Do you envision this as a quote unquote war movie? Because there's a lot more to the story than just tanks and, World War II. Do you envision it as a war movie in a similar vein as Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, Dunkirk, things like that?
Ian? Oh, I think Ian's fallen off again. I'll answer in his stead. Ian always, just in case, maybe we won't use this, but
sure.
Ian always envisaged it as a peace film, a story, about anti-war, and the fact that TJ, our protagonist, wanted to be a vet. He never wanted to sign up. He never wanted to, he was all about saving life, protecting life, rather than war. So I think if we see it all through the lens of TJ, if it's all happening to him, all the horror, the brutality, the senseless decisions that are made above, all the things that, in quotes, ordinary people had to go through, like TJ, just senseless death.
Well, that's the thing, is like I've read the book, and I do get the idea of an
Mm.
anti-war movie, but ironically, you sort of have to show the brutality of war for the message to be, let's not do war. Yeah,
and the fact that this isn't a spoiler because there would be no show without it, but the fact that he survived the whole war, and the fact that it just went on and on and on for him. All those times that he met his superior and said, "I'm done. My nerves are shredded. I'm no use to anybody." And no, you're not. We'll decide that. Off you go. Back out you go again. And that just kept happening and happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's more of an anti-war film than a war film.
Yeah, I know, but I wonder how much will need to be devoted to the harsh realities of war. Well, that sort of relates to the next thing I wanted to ask, and we'll go on. We might have this episode without Ian, and that would be fine. He doesn't have to be a part of every episode because there's a lot of us working on this project. I mean, he is the originator of the material, but
maybe this question will pop up in a coffee shop nearby,
and that'll work as well. But you and I will march on. Because this next question actually might touch a pain point with him. And I'm almost glad he's not here for a moment to get your thoughts on what you think he might say to this. Have you considered, this is sort of a question for Ian, but what a screenwriter, if you're going to hire a screenwriter to convert a novel into a screenplay, what the screenwriter might actually probably will do, and that is vastly alter the contents of the book. This is a passion project of Ian's for nearly 40 years. What do you think? What lines do you think Ian is going to draw and say, "Look, no, you just can't do that with the script"?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Because the driving force behind all of this was to get his father's story out there,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time sue for peace.
Right.
But in terms of, Ian's not that precious, actually. I've been
Okay.
surprised along the way about a few conversations that we've had, and I think if he is sort of die hard, this is the story, this is the book, it can be no other way,
Mm-hmm.
then our percentage chance of the whole thing getting off the ground gets less and less.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah,
think he
I agree.
is cognizant of the fact that it will have to be changed to a certain extent, just even for the logistics of filmmaking, and storytelling, and visual storytelling rather than written storytelling. So
Yes.
I think he will be open to changing it a bit, but this is my take on it now.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot of gold in the book, and that a lot of
Sure.
really, really good storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if they were to change it dramatically and turn it into something it just isn't,
Right.
without, say, the personal cost on TJ, if it just turned into a classic hero movie,
Mm.
a bit more like a Bond, say,
Right.
where less so modern Bond, but traditionally Bond has been about the guy that can,
Right.
and
Right.
we're not. Yes, we see him tested, and we see a bit more of his personal demons coming out now, but I see it as the everyday guy, the
Yeah.
everyday guy that all this unbelievable stuff is thrust upon, and like I said a few minutes ago, we see it through his eyes, and I think if that were to change, I don't think it would be
Mm.
the story as it is at all.
What happens a lot and what generally happens in screenplays is the storyline is simplified from what it is in a novel, and then sometimes just some subplots are just omitted altogether. And
Mm,
I did a little research on like movies that did that, successful movies that did that. The Shining, was based on a Stephen King. I think, yeah, it was a Stephen
yeah,
King novel,
yeah, it is.
and yeah, it's really somewhat dramatically altered from what Stephen King wrote. Fight Club, that's a book I actually read, and it is different. There are just chunks of it that are, and that's not a big book. TJ's War is a big book. Fight
Mhm.
Club was actually a small book, and just chunks of it are left out. Um, Forrest Gump, the character is really simplified in the movie version from what he has a lot more depth in the book. But yeah, I just wonder how Ian, and we joked in a meeting, you and Sia and I, about Sia is also a part of this project, about changing the name. That also happens a lot. Blade
Mhm.
Runner was originally named "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
Yes, wasn't that a book? It was a
Yeah, that's what
book,
I'm
wasn't
saying. It was a book, and then they changed it
it?
to
Philip K. Dick, is that right?
uh yep,
Not sure.
Philip K. Dick. Die Hard was originally Nothing Lasts Forever. Stand by Me was originally called The Body. Field of Dreams was called Shoeless Joe. So I mean, they may, if we get a producer, they may say, I like the book, I don't like the name.
Mm.
I don't know how. I mean, I like the name, but I don't know how Ian would feel about that.
I think he'd be all right with it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be too precious about that. I think, like I said, if the details were there, um, well, less so the details. I think if the spirit of it was kept,
Hmm.
um, that yeah, the appalling things that happened to TJ and
Right.
the personal cost, and yeah, I mean, yeah, you can
The
get a lot
story
more
it's
into a book.
yeah, the
Yeah.
story itself is more important to him than some kind of pride in name, I guess, or I mean, as long
Oh,
as the
absolutely.
right, so as long as the narrative is not just grossly altered.
Yeah, we'll have to do a comment video where Ian has played this and we film him
Yeah.
vehemently. What? I would never.
Yes. Right.
No one's touching the name.
That's perfect. David, what strategies do you and Ian have in mind for securing the funding from potential investors, especially given somewhat of a lack of experience? I know that you have experience in the entertainment industry, but in the film industry, but that doesn't stop people, by the way. There have been plenty of films made by people that weren't Hollywood producers. But what strategies do you have in mind initially to get the funding?
This is not going to take up much filming time.
Okay, that's fine. I can move on.
I think there will be stages.
Hmm.
There's there are definitely levels of funding, as far as I understand, and as you said, yes, I'm from an acting background, so I have one side of experience of TV, film, theatre, but virtually none in terms of the other side of things, and particularly production and finance. So we're kind of reaching out. We're reaching out to old school buddies, people I might have met along the way, through you guys as well, some of the people that Ian's brought on board. And we're just kind of what we're doing at the moment, not just for storytelling, because I think it makes for a better story if the less we know at the start, people will be like, come on, there's no way these guys are going to do it. So, longer journey. But I think, if we're just open and upfront with people, and we've had a few meetings already where people have been saying, this is just, what are you doing? This is, you're never going to get this made. You're never, you need this for a start off. And we're like, okay, thank you. So yeah, it will be a long slog, but I think in a way, trying to do something when you don't know anything is, if you had a little bit of knowledge about how difficult it was, you'd probably never start.
Yeah. Well,
So,
that's actually a good question, a good segue to the next question I had. And Ian may or may not be with us again. Can you hear us, Ian? Are you there?
Finally.
All right. Well, we've got an episode where that's with or without you, Ian. But we're glad you're back.
Is this the famous car Wi-Fi?
Yeah. Well, no, but don't ask.
Okay. Well, you're in time for the next question I wanted to ask, and it's kind of a difficult one because in a way I want to ask, tell me what you don't know, and then I mean, how do you know what you don't know? But what do you think at this point you haven't given ample thought to? What do you think you might be overlooking?
Well, there are known knowns. There are unknown knowns. In a way, that's difficult to answer because we don't know what we don't know.
Well,
but,
right.
But in general terms, people might be getting sick of the sound of my voice now. Ian might want to chip in, but
what do you imagine is going to be the biggest roadblock? The money?
Well, let me come back. No, not really. So my career has been around taking on pioneering projects. Done that for the last 30 years. And for example, we built the world's first train crew scheduling system. We built the world's first system for managing resources on the largest port in the world. Doubled the turnover of the port with no extra cost, so their profits went through the roof. All of these projects had the transition from give a major airline a brain transplant, and in each case, number one, people didn't know if it could be done. Number two, nobody had any real idea how to do it. One of the biggest ones I was ever involved in was the Nissan car factory back in 1997, 98, 99. And they got themselves into a point where they needed a solution and had been told by many people over a period of 6 months that there was no solution. So we were called in, and over a period of 18 months, we gave them the solution that they're still using today.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 months into that project, the team that I was managing, we still had no idea how we were going to do it.
Mm.
So I'm very comfortable with going into a project knowing that there are unknowns, knowing that there are lots of unknowns.
Yeah.
And being able to quantify the risk.
You do strike me as a build your parachute on the way down kind of guy. So I think that's a good thing. Well, let's do a hypothetical here, and let's just take the funding thing out of it. Let's say Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or the founder of Uniqlo, that's the richest guy in Japan. Let's just say they said, okay, David and Ian, I believe in you. Check your bank account. You go online, voila, $50 million deposit was made. You got a green light, all systems go. What's next? Who do you call? Do you just Google what's Steven Spielberg's telephone number, or like, what do you do then?
Well, I'm sure David wants to come in on this as well, but from my perspective, I don't think that's how it's going to happen. I think that there are a number of steps to get to the point where that might happen.
Okay.
But the next steps, I think there are a variety of ways we can go, and I think that this podcast that we are doing is fundamental to which path we take. I don't think it's for the viewers and the listeners to this podcast to just monitor our progress. I feel that the podcast itself will help to shine a light on the best way forward as we interview people who've done something like this before, and indeed from comments that people who watch our podcast might send in. It strikes me that at an early stage we need to get a professional screenwriter on board, to take what we've done. I think the book is there. The book is working well, but obviously there's a massive difference between a book, a creative nonfiction book, and a screenplay that will work on screen.
Yeah, we did discuss that while in your absence, and David answered for you and said you'd be fine with all drastic changes, and that there would be no problems whatsoever.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe not that.
Yeah, change anything. Yeah.
Well,
that's always dangerous.
I had asked David.
Rambo 7.
Yeah, I had asked David what lines did he think that you were going to draw in the sand and say, well, okay, you can't make this alteration to the script. Let me change the question now that you're back with us, though. How much control over the project are you willing to give up? Let's say you get Francis Ford Coppola. I looked up; he's still around, on board, and he wants to, he wants to do the movie, but he wants complete creative control. Are you good with that? Or, even if he takes it far away from your initial vision?
Well, I think I'm probably good with it, because the story is out there. The story that I wanted people to know is in the book, and the film might get people to read the book. So if the film's radically different from the book, I probably don't care, as long as it actually gets people to know
the
real story one way or the other. So I think we've just renovated. The state I'm in is because we spent the last 2.5 months renovating a house before moving in. And I've done a lot of the work, and so has my wife, Louise. We've done wherever we can, we've done the work. But there are times where we need to call in the plumber, or call in the plasterer, or the builder to knock down a wall. And you tell them the area, but you're not going to employ somebody and tell them how to do it.
Right.
That's their skill.
Yeah.
So when it comes to making a film, I know what I like, but I've no idea how to make a film. So I've got to let the guys who've done this before and know what they're doing get on with it.
I think that's smart.
So I don't think there are too many lines in that respect.
Nice. I think that's smart. A good way to go about it. Well, what's next? Who do you want to? I mean, there's so many people to talk to, whether it's an editor, a producer, a director, or whatever. Who do you wish to talk to next? I don't mean a specific person, but I mean a film producer, or what do you think is the next step here?
I think we need to speak to. I have been chatting with somebody who is a producer, but as I'm sure people are aware, there are different types of producer. So he is more the producer once it's all up and running. So it's sometimes called a line producer, and they kind of run the sort of, so we need that on that day, and we need you guys over there, and they kind of do the admin for the thing once it's up and running. I think what we need is the sort of pre-production advice, how to get it from, the seed funding advice, the getting the interest. Someone's already mentioned the fact that we need a literary agent for the screenplay, because otherwise the studio won't touch it. They can't afford to, because if they read it and reject it and then make something similar, they can be sued.
Right.
Whereas anything submitted by an agency, that they've covered all of that. So stuff like that. Yeah, we need some advice on those kind of moves.
There's never one way to do something. And there is always a way. So at least in my experience, there's always been a way. So where we get information like you must go through an agent or a literary agent or whatever, if we can find one, great. But if we can't find one, that cannot be a barrier. There has to be a way to be able to do this. And maybe we do have to go through a literary agent. But what we really need are a collection of people telling us their experiences. And from that, we can take, we can get a real sense for what are absolute boundaries and what are often you have to do this, but sometimes you can do that.
Completely agree. There will be a consensus.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. He's very
But I think also the thing that this project is no different from any other is that people ultimately deal with people. We buy from people. And if we can get interest from some, people with influence, if we can get somebody on our side, if we can get a name actor or a name director, or somehow just skip a few stages, then all the kind of, this is the advice that you guys need when you're starting out. Well, some of it will still be true, and some of it, like Ian says, maybe we don't need that because we've already got that other thing in our pocket, that other bit of leverage or whatever. So I think people will be the main thing. If we can get hold of people that say, do you know what, this is an amazing story and this needs to be seen, then
and we all know people, like people that are that might have some attachment in one way or another to this industry. I mentioned in one of our meetings that that I know a guy who he actually does have to put funding together for a show he has on PBS in America. He happens to be at the time of this recording, he happens to be on a motorcycle recording another episode for his show, and he's across America. So he finishes that up in mid-May, and I might have to wait until then before I'm able to bother him. But he certainly would be in the know of, like, how do you put together, sponsorship? How do you put together money for this? So he would be a good person to talk to. I think that's where we are next. Yeah.
So, Mark, it strikes me that a number of people who have been following the podcast from the beginning might be wondering how you came on board, and
who am I?
I can certainly explain it. but you ever go first. I'll fill in the blanks if there are any.
Well, I didn't want to plug my own podcast on this one, but I am the host of the Zenn Sammich podcast, a wildly successful podcast. It is in the top 5% globally. And I met you, Ian, through that because you are an interesting chap. And when you wrote this book, I wanted to have you on. So we discussed TJ's War on that podcast. And I also happen to be a former practicing attorney in the United States. And I practice in both criminal law, that hopefully will not come in handy for this project, but I also practice in the civil arena as well in contract law. I worked in securities law, but I was dealing with contracts. So I might be able to lend a hand in that regard as well. So I think all of that, being a podcaster, a lawyer, and just, a jovial chap, I think is why you might have invited me on board.
As I have in my LinkedIn profile, the very first part of my introduction is the secret to success is to surround yourself with good people.
Indeed.
And I believe Mark is the first to come on board after David. But there are 3 others in the background who we will meet in the next few days, in the next few episodes. And it's not really about the fact that you're an attorney of law and that you're a commercial lawyer. And it's not really about the fact that you've got Zenn Sammich, which is a very successful podcast. It's much more to do with you're good for me. There's and I'm sure for David as well. There's a connection there. As David said earlier on, people. It's about the people, and getting good people on board is vital to the success of this project. And I think that the mix that you're bringing into it is going to make a massive difference to the speed at which this project goes forward.
Well, thank you. And, let me reciprocate. The feeling's mutual because there are a number of people who've been on my podcast that I might like to some extent. And if they had approached me and said, "Hey, I want to make a podcast about making a $50 million movie," I would have politely declined. But because it's you and because I know that we do mesh well and I do believe in you as an entrepreneur and as someone who can make things happen, I was all in. You had me at hello.
Oh,
Rennie Zellweger, you are not.
Well, that's true.
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah, I think with that,
pleased,
go ahead.
Please do that. And can I just mention the others that we've got because Sia, how do you pronounce her last name?
Yes, a torn rat. It's
a torn rat.
Ty, yeah.
Is doing fantastic work in the background. I hope you'll all meet her very soon. Quinn, who we talk about all the time. Quinn's been there almost since the very beginning, shortly after David, and does wonderful work on social media stuff and has some great ideas. And then there's a guy who's just joined us very recently, Sincera, who is the voice at the beginning of the podcast. Already a number of people have said to me, "Who is this? Is that AI?" I go, "No, it's not AI. That's a real person." So nice. We're building up a fellowship of the ring here, and
I think this is a sort of microcosm, is that the right word, of what we ultimately are going to do as we grow the project. You came to me and then I mentioned Sia because when you came to me with the project, I thought, okay, who do I know that's the right person to bring in at this point? And I'm like, Sia's the right person to bring in at this point. And I knew she would fit. I know other people who produce podcasts and who do the things that she does in the background, but I just knew she was the right person for this job. And, we just keep doing that. We just keep, not that we make our fellowship too large where we got to share every little piece of the pie, but, but we do keep just like, okay, well, who do you know that will fit with this project, that will further this project, that will take it to the next step. And I think that's what we do. That's how we make a $50 million movie.
Perfect.
There you go.
David, you're quiet. Is he still there?
He's there.
Nothing. When there's nothing to say, don't say anything.
Well, that's good. I think that about wraps it up for this episode anyway. We did cover a lot of good ground, and I think that we covered some areas that you might have talked about in a previous episode, but I hopefully approach it from a different angle that you might not have considered. I can't wait for the next steps. I imagine both of you are in this for the journey as much as you are the destination. What an amazing ride to put a film together. I can only imagine the surreal delight when we're all wearing our tuxedos at the premiere one day. So thank you, fellas.
when we stagger down the red carpet with a cane, and
yeah, well,
no hair, and it's this way, Mr. Blair.
But I completely agree with that, David. And I read recently that happiness is not a place, it's a direction.
There you go. I love it.
Happiness is an inside job.
That as well.
Good one. All right. Have a great day, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Mark. Cheers, Ian.